Welcome back, everyone, to another Hearts of Iron 4 mod spotlight, and this time, obviously, it's 1000 Week Reich. In case you don't know what this is a German victory scenario, alternate history mod. Germany wins World War II, of course, not World War I. It's not Kaiserreich. Haha, funny joke from 2018 Hearts of Iron 4 modding scene. I don't know, I don't give a shit. This is the other sort of big German victory mod, of course, other than TNO. And the difference between this and TNO is that in TNO you have a complete Axis victory, while this is a more like Nazi Germany wins and is still around, while the United States wins the Pacific theater. So it's got that kind of interesting dichotomy of, you know, Germany still being le big Germany, but the United States is a lot sort of more prominent than in TNO, even more prominent than in TNO. And you don't have, obviously, the Japanese Empire ruling over Asia, and you don't have some of the more wacky things like, you know, the Mediterranean Dam, the Atlantropa. This is a, quote-unquote, more grounded in reality experience, I guess. There's less of the wacky sort of, you know, Wolfenstein-y stuff, although there is some of that, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. So, when you start off the mod, you get this nice event. Essentially, what this does is it explains the lore in a very, very brief manner. Basically, the Germans went and took over you know, most of Western Russia, and then the war sort of just stalled. Oh, this is not supposed to be here. Don't look at this, okay? This is not supposed to look like this. It's supposed to have the normal flag with Beria, you know, the Soviet spy guy, as the leader. I was messing around just to see if some paths were completed, so, you know, I might have done something to break it. We're gonna get to the Soviet Union in a little bit. It's not that important at the start. And obviously, Germany sort of took over most of Western Russia and the Western Soviet Union and, you know, Eastern Europe as a whole. The German sphere itself sort of collapsed, however, and started fighting each other. So as you can see, the New Order, the Neue Ordnung faction, yeah, it's got like all the puppets in it, but none of the normal Axis members. Italy broke off, sort of, not completely, but they mostly broke off. They've still got Mussolini running things, and they own most of the Central Mediterranean, of course, although the British are still around in the Sinai, or sorry, not the Sinai, the Suez, and they've got their hands all over the Middle East, essentially. So it is much more of a traditional scenario than TNO, where British and Western influence in general has completely fallen apart. Now, you also have a sort of not as rump France as you might expect. They're still technically under the Germans, although they're basically breaking free as we speak. And so that's the basic sort of premise for Europe. In Asia, we have that the Soviet Union mostly fell apart into a lot of different states east of essentially Central Siberia, but managed to survive. You have that China is really, really strong. Well, maybe not really, really strong, but they are potentially super strong because Japan lost and this Chinese Civil War went in a different way, I guess, because the Americans intervened. And Vietnam turned into the Socialist Republic of Vietnam, I suppose because the USA never really objected to the Viet Minh taking over because there was never any communist China. So that's that. The only kind of weird thing is that India was taken over by a person who in real life was pro-Japanese and sort of pro-Nazi. Not pro-Nazi in that he was a Nazi, and not pro-Japanese in that he was a massive, like, you know, kill everyone, but he was a person that was so anti-British that he essentially was like, okay, alliance with Japan is better than the British. That's Chandra Bose. He's a super interesting character. Of course, as you can see, he is represented here as a social democrat in most mods, he's going to be either an authoritarian democrat or a fascist, which just sort of represents you how, and both these can be correct interpretations of him, sort of represents how, you know, sort of complex of a figure he is. And he's kind of like, you know, one of those haha funny, he do the left right sort of mixing, you know, funny Nazbol gang ooga booga, you know. Although in here, it seems like from reading from this sort of biography that they have, he didn't really side with Japan as much. Yeah, as much as he did in real life. In real life, he literally commanded an army of Indian collaborators to Japan. Oh, no, that's a song. It's probably copyrighted, so I decided to avoid it. And he's trying to reunite India, essentially, under the central government in Delhi. Oh, this, I love this one. No, shit. Yeah, Night Raid, please. Lovely nationalist Chinese music. So, he's trying to reunite India under the government in Delhi. And that's, like, the basic premise of it all. You know, Japan is occupied still, although they are sort of regaining statehood. Now, in South America, of course, is the same. South America is always the same. But in here, there's actually content, especially for Brazil. Brazil is very interesting, remind you, in this timeline. Also, Perón. Or, not Perón, Perón. when there's content for Argentina, it's going to be interesting. Because Perón is always interesting. Always super interesting. So, if I want to hear more, it tells you more about the Crisis of 48, which is essentially when Germany, a couple of years after winning the war, almost explodes. This is the inevitable moment in these alternate histories where Germany, you know, reveals itself as a house of cards. In TNO, it's the West Russian War when the, you know, when the remnants of the Soviet Union invade into the West. And in here, you have that Hitler falls into a kind of coma, and obviously, you know, Nazi Germany without the Führer in trouble, and Henning von Tresco, who was in real life one of the rare actual anti-Nazi German generals, tries to take over and dissolve the Nazis. Doesn't work, and he's killed when, you know, Hitler comes back. But, you know, Hitler is dying, essentially, and there's a power struggle between the various different heads of different, you know, power bases in Germany. So, this is where, essentially, it all starts. Now, to see the various different paths for the German leaders, you should probably go ahead and head towards my lovely stream and go look at my Germany stream. Although, I guess to be fair, I could like try to see if I can find the events in the meantime. There we go. So essentially, there's 5 Führers that can happen after Hitler dies. But while Hitler is dying, you have this this focus tree to get through. You know, it's pretty standard, trying to revive Germany's economy and all that. But when Hitler dies, the unthinkable is when the real game starts for Germany. So essentially, what happens is that there's a massive power struggle. This mod really loves like the massive power struggle, which is like an event chain where different essentially figures can ally or oppose each other, and eventually one of them or the other comes out on top, depending on which choices you have gone for. So essentially, where the hell is it? God damn it. Essentially, you have Goebbels, Speer Goebbels, Basically, you know, you can have both of these Führers, but at the beginning they're allied. Then you have Göring, obviously the greatest man in the world, literally, in terms of size. Bormann and Himmler. So, you know, you have some of the usual suspects. I'm trying to find if I can get the bloody events in here. I don't really see these, I don't really see these events, goddammit. Oh well, you're gonna have to be faithful. So Himmler is just what you'd expect, you know, crazy, insane, absurd. So what he does is he goes and institutes, you know, the sort of ultra-Nazi, totalitarian, you know, not funny. And his end game is either the SS Ordensstaat Germania or whatever the fuck. It's like, you know, like TNO Burgundy, but all of Germany. Except without the, you know, nukes, or the nuclear holocaust plan and all that. Or he can do a funny and declare himself the Emperor of the Aryans and declare the Aryan Empire. Okay, interesting. Bormann is essentially just a status quo candidate, as you'd expect. While Göring, unlike in TNO where he's the hyper-militarist, Göring in here is the essentially reasonable candidate. He wants to mostly reform Germany's foreign relations and pursue a sort of détente with the United States. So that's Göring, and he's kind of interesting. While Speer is the sort of economic candidate, but not in the way you'd expect, because he essentially wants to sort of continue on with expanding, for example, German slavery. Yeah, Speer is not fun in this mod. He's definitely not a quote-unquote reformist. And Goebbels, on the other hand, is this sort of, you know, full-on insane, kill everyone, total war, you know, total war speech, funny, and all that. So the Speer-Goebbels block is probably the worst. Probably the worst. Not gonna lie. Bormann also is horrible because he basically, you know, kills everyone else, you know, and continues just normal Nazi Germany. Göring is the sort of middle of the line between just like reformism and Nazism, or I suppose Nazi reformism and Nazism. While there can be two other, and obviously, you know, Himmler is Himmler. What the fuck do I even need to talk about? There's also two other things that can happen, or actually three other things that can happen. And one of those things branches off into a whole lot of other stuff. So you can have the army coup, because essentially the internal Nazi power struggle is just going too nuts. And if the army coups, you become the Wehrmacht, which essentially institutes a military dictatorship, but it also starts a German civil war. Now, German civil war is very, very likely to happen with most of these paths, but the army is the only path that guarantees it. While there's also the SS coup, which can, I think, also cause a German civil war, but is actually less, you know, less unstable than the army coup, which is very, very weird. I don't understand that. And that leads into Himmler again. So if you have a few paths go a little bit weird in the power struggle and you decide that you want the SS, then you can get them in that way as well. Now, the German Civil War itself is split between three major factions, and it also leads to the explosion of all the Reich's commissariats, which I believe they can also explode normally, but obviously if Germany is united, then they can come in, you know, and take over everything again rather easily. In this mod, by the way, you cannot justify war goals just like in TNO, so you're relying on the focus tree to do that. Now, the German Civil War is split between three. There's a Himmler sort of SS faction in the west, kind of like the Heydrich Germany in TNO, but actually a lot stronger. And it has all the Netherlands, all Belgium, you know, Burgundy, Alsace-Lorraine, and all that. Then you have a military faction in the south, and in the northeast, in East Prussia, which, again, they follow the Wehrmacht tree, essentially. They're like those people who, you know, always tried to coup, essentially, Hitler during the war. Those, like, 4 German army officers who then got blown out of proportion by post-war allied narratives who desperately wanted to rehabilitate as many German military people as possible to rearm Western Germany because of the Soviet Union, and thus started the whole clean Wehrmacht thing, even though it wasn't. And then you have Nazi Germany, you know, the Nazi German government, led by whoever is leading it in the center. Now, there can also be other leaders of the Nazi German government if some things have gone wrong in your sort of council decisions. You can have, for example, Dönitz, you know, the submarine force commander admiral guy. You can have a few other sort of quote-unquote compromise candidates. But they generally lead to the German Civil War all the time, and then reunifying Germany with them is difficult. So that's that. You're not technically supposed to play as them if you want, you know, just standard Nazi Germany. So that's Germany. As you can see, there's a lot of content in Germany already. Like, all of these paths are very, very well fleshed out. Like, this whole thing is empty because this whole thing is filled with the focus tree of whoever you're choosing. Now, when you have the German Civil War, if you're playing on as the German government, in a year after the beginning of the German Civil War, there's actually even another Germany that can spawn, and that's the People's Germany, which spawns as a sort of socialist slash liberal slash communist coalition that takes over the capital and tries to essentially wipe Nazism from the face of the earth. Which is what I was trying to do in my stream. It's a very fun path, but, you know, it's very, very much further into the game, essentially. It's what they call endgame content. Now, the other major powers are obviously the USSR, potentially, the Republic of China, actually. Japan is a little bit more secondary in this one, obviously. And the United States, Italy, and the United Kingdom. Now, the United Kingdom is mostly standard, so we're going to get through that first. It's essentially what you'd expect, you know. You have to deal with decolonization very prominently, obviously, either sort of committing to it or trying to sort of salvage the empire and, you know, doing some post-colonialism. Then you have, obviously, the economic question of whether or not to continue with nationalization, as the Labour Party is currently trying to do under Attlee. And you can even expand that into the National Works Project, which is, I believe, basically the UK's, like, historical route, where they went, like, super, like, mixed economy with a shitload of central planning and state investment. The nationalization also is there, but that's basically, like, you know, going in and standing by the current economic regime, or you can do the privatization, you know, if you like Margaret Thatcher, apparently, somehow, I don't know. So that's, of course, if you elect the Conservatives, or if there is a hung parliament. Now, actually, what can Mosley even do? Mosley does national works. So there's a Mosley Path, of course. As you can see, it's an Easter egg path added for fun. So yeah, you could do that if you want and do fascist Britain, obviously. You can even do, I believe, if Mosley just like fucks up too much, there is a sort of royal coup, and yeah, I'm guessing that because crack down on the fascists, you know. There can be a royal coup and then new elections again. I wonder what paths stem from that, but I have not played the UK nor seen too much of the AI doing it. Or you can continue, obviously, with the Labour Party or the Conservatives, which is just what you'd expect from the Labour Party and the Conservatives. The hung parliament is either a Labour Party that's not pro-Italy. In fact, it goes even a little bit further left, but like, you know, still basically social democracy. Or you can have the Fifth National Government, which is a sort of massive, you know, all-party coalition. That's basically Britain. Yeah, I don't find it too interesting, but I don't know. United States of America, surprisingly, in my opinion, also not that interesting. I mean, it's the USA. It's just what you'd expect. There's an isolationist candidate, Taft. There's, you know, establishment Republicans who want to strengthen, you know, the free market economy. There's the moderate Democrats who apparently are already pro-welfare. I guess they're more sort of Roosevelt Democrats. There's the Dixiecrats, of course, who want segregation forever. And there's MacArthur, who is like the one sort of curveball that gets thrown in there, and he's like super nationalist, obviously. He's kind of based. And then, you know, you can do things with like the New Deal, you know, the civil rights, and all that. But, you know, it's just standard. It's just standard USA. You know, you can fuck up Nazi Germany and all that. Or you can have a coup. I'm not sure how, but apparently you can have a military coup and either restore democracy again or just like completely, you know, go with military America. That's kind of nifty, I guess. It's, you know, the revenge of the business plot, I suppose. And yeah, that's just America. It's America. What did you expect? What the fuck did you expect from America? It's America. There's no one cares. Does Turkey have a focus tree? No, they don't. I guess that's Turkey as well. So that leaves us with two, like, last, or actually three, like, somewhat major powers, and then France and Japan, which are a little bit more secondary. And I suppose India. Yeah. So Italy is Italy. It's fascist. It's fascist Italy. You have to choose between liberalizing the economy or continuing with the corporatism. And you have the option of either reforming fascism or continuing with fascism, just like TNO, you know. Although they do the switcheroo, and in this mod, it's Chano who's the more hardliner fascist guy, while Italo Balbo, who was an important Italian Air Force / in general military personality in the Second World War, widely believed to be essentially murdered by the fascist higher-ups because he was sort of inconveniently opinionated, let's just say, in 1940. He was flying over some port in Libya, you know, going back to Italy. Again, he was an Air Force guy, and he's conveniently shot down by accidental friendly fire from an Italian warship in the port. Interesting. Basically, he wasn't too fond of allying with Germany. But yeah, basically, he is sorta reformist, more pro, you know, sort of Vatican, slightly more pro-monarchy. Yeah, that's basically that. Well, this one, the rule of an iron fist is the full, you know, fascism. And obviously the big choice for Italy is either to realign with Germany or sort of seek its own path in the southern European region. And that mostly depends on who is winning in the German struggle. So if Goebbels or Himmler is around, then obviously you cannot keep the Pact of Steel. If you have a German civil war, then Speidel, who's one of the military leaders, winning essentially is going to lead to Italy wanting to keep the Pact of Steel because he's a little bit more conciliatory. Well, if you can always break the Pact of Steel, essentially. And that leads into the foreign policy route, which is the most interesting for Italy because it's obviously dealing with the Mediterranean and the rest of Europe. So if you've picked to sort of rekindle the Pact of Steel, you have the détente with Germany, and you rejoin the Axis, essentially. And you help out the Axis getting more Mediterranean members. Or if you are opposing Germany, you are, taking over Southern Europe for glorious Italia. Yes. And hopefully you're going to kill the Ustascia because fuck the Ustascia and the Ustascia are winning. Then you have China. Obviously. The glorious China. The greatest country in the world. Especially led by the greatest leader ever, Generalissimo Chiang Kai-shek, who has a few issues on his hand. Just like real-life China. He's probably a little bit less equipped to actually deal with them than real-life, Maoist China. And that's saying something. Now, his big whole shtick is going to be that there's going to be a Vietnam War between the Republic of China and Vietnam. That's essentially, China not liking what's going on in Vietnam, obviously because there's probably, still a little bit of remnants of the CCP kicking around, and, having socialist Vietnam to the south is not exactly the greatest thing in the world. They also don't want, obviously, a strong Indochina to oppose, sort of China's hegemony in Southeast Asia. Just like Maoist China, or actually Dengist China, I suppose, in real life, in 1979, I believe, real China invaded real Vietnam. Both had red flags. Essentially, it was funny because in that war, basically Vietnam fought with Chinese weapons against China, and militarily almost won, but politically it was clear that China basically could walk over and, sort of be a bit of a policeman in the area, and that was the last time China was at war in real life. Unless you count, like, a lot of other things that are going on. Now, the Chinese tree is essentially all about trying to fix the horrible mess that is China, and sort of lead itself into the glorious years of, China rising in the East. Jesus Christ. That was 99% copyrighted. No. Sure, some Nazi music. Fine, why not? Obviously Nazi music. So you have obviously the option of more government intervention in the currency and in the economy to try to sort of make China, be the great economic powerhouse of Asia, of course. And in the rest of the tree, obviously you have the quite prominent Vietnam War. If you win, you go down essentially the Chiang Kai-shek tree further down because the grand victory. If you have the Vietnamese shame, now you might be thinking that you're coming down here, right? And, becoming the eternal president of China as Chiang Kai-shek, it's so great. It's Chiang Kai-shek. Even though we lost Vietnam, we still have Chiang Kai-shek. Chiang Kai-shek is so great. Nah. There's the executive committee in disarray. Essentially what happens is that this victory in the struggles never happens. And if Chiang loses the war in Vietnam, then he's forever discredited within the KMT because he's done goofed. And the Nanjing insanity follows. Now, I have not played as China yet, nor have I gone back and looked through the dev diaries in depth, but there's a lot of different paths for China. There's a lot of them. A lot of them. Now, in case you don't know, the KMT was a super factionalistic party. So, yeah, also as evidenced by the fact that in real life, they also had a kind of weird civil war. Shortly after essentially taking over most of central China in 1927. So yeah, that's the Republic of China, and that's the last sort of major. Now, before we take a look at the USSR, which is, you know, again, it becomes a major very, very quickly, but at the beginning it's quite small. We're going to take a look very quickly at the Reich's Commissariat focus trees. Essentially, they have a shared focus tree where, you know, they can do stuff. And at the end, they get the choice between... Well, actually, normally they don't get the choice. It's only Ostland that gets choices. But they get a tree that's supposed to be essentially dealing with their own explosions. And this is happening essentially when Hitler dies. When Hitler dies, a bunch of rebellions break out within these. If I have the time later, I'll load up a save where there's just a massive mess going on in the East. There's a shitload of tags that gets released and sort of start to fight with each other. Some are pro-German loyalists, some are, you know, sort of normal, run-of-the-mill nationalists. Some are pro-Soviet. Some are anarchists, you know, all the stuff. And there's a couple other German factions. That's the SS Ordnungsstaat Banat, which is essentially just like a meme country, where they can declare the Südschwaben the Reich, you know. Yeah, just be an SS state in Banat. It's there. The other great SS state is Crimea. Now, if I recall correctly, if I recall my German occult Nazi history correctly, the Germans did have this like weird thing for Crimea. As you can see here, it's called Gotenland in SS Ordnungsstaat Gotenland. This is because, of course, if you've played HOI4, you know that the Goths did inhabit southern Crimea for a long time, and they were essentially a remnant of the Goths for a long, long time. The Goths that, for the most part, sort of invaded into Eastern Europe in the fall of the Roman Empire. So we're talking like serious, like what the fuck, old history. The Nazis, of course, were fascinated by this stuff and were like, yes, this is one of the ancient homes of the Aryan people, or some shit like that, which is basically what they considered most of Ukraine. Funnily enough, like, Indo-Europeans apparently are likely to have originated in this region, so the Nazis weren't entirely wrong? I don't know. I don't fucking understand. You know, Indo-Europeans, the people who killed everyone except the Basques in Europe. So, this is basically like the Burgundy of this game, except it's only just like a funny thing. It's not like, you know, we're gonna nuke everyone, except it is we're gonna nuke everyone. And they even do the Totenhand, you know, the dead hand, like if someone nukes us, we have an automated system that detects that we have been nuked, and then automatically launches the nukes without the need of anyone, you know, pressing the button, any human pressing the button, and is gonna destroy our enemies, or some shit like that. Yeah, so yeah, it's the funny, you know, nuke SS ultra-Nazi thing. They can also even declare the Gotisches Reich. This leads to them trying to take over all of the German Reich. Because why the fuck not? That's basically what happens after the German Civil War. It's under a Heydrich. you can imagine that they're not like too principled or loyal in any way. I don't know. The big boy, obviously, other than Germany, though, is the remnants of the USSR. Now we tag over to the Soviets again. And at the beginning, you're supposed to have Lavrenti Beria. Obviously, you know, actually, he's not in here, goddammit. He was the head of the NKVD from 1938 to 1953, I believe, 54 maybe. Famous part of the Great Purges, famous architect of the later sort of NKVD state apparatus under Stalin. In this timeline, though, he's not as bad. Beria was always a very pragmatic individual. So he's basically, when the game begins in 1952, he's trying to reform the Soviet Union in a way where it can sort of regrow its power. But then he dies, and there's a power struggle. Now, the possible outcomes of the power struggle are a lot, which is a very, very scientific... I like the song. Which is a very, very scientific measurement, I know. But basically, some of them, unfortunately, are not around yet. Like, they're not developed. For example, this Fyodor Ivanov, who in real life was a person called Ernst Junger, who was a German ultranationalist who wasn't a Nazi, who admired the Soviet Union. He does a bunch of shit, but as you can see, the focuses are in there. It's just that they're not, like, you know, they don't have any effect. And those are mostly the routes, or sorry, not the routes. That's mostly the route that stems from where the fuck is he? Oh, he's not around in the head of government. That's basically what results from Vyacheslav Molotov, the Soviet foreign minister under Stalin, winning the power struggle. Don't pick him in the current version of Thousand Week Reich, because that leads to essentially the Soviet Union not being playable, because all of the paths that stem from Molotov are not finished. Now, the paths that are finished most prominently feature Konev, who in real life was a Soviet army marshal. Now, Konev is the leader of this Soviet ideology called ultravisionarism, or ultravisionaries. Basically, since Beria, who was the head of the NKVD, took over, the NKVD, aka the secret police, is a lot more present in the Soviet political scene than even in real life. So, like, in real life, obviously, you have the KGB, which is one of the parts of the Soviet partocracy, the Soviet party state. You know, you have the party controls the army, the NKVD, the Gosplan, which is the state planning directorate. You know, all these moving parts, you know, all the Soviet academic organs, all these moving parts within the Soviet system that sort of influence the party and through it the government, right? Which guarantees a kind of plurality to the Soviet Union, even though it was a quote-unquote totalitarian state. It still had, you know, internal debate within itself. It's just that it wasn't, you know, it wasn't conducted in the same way as in, you know, more democratic countries. Which, incidentally, is also what happens in China in real life, but we're not getting into that discussion. So, in this timeline, Konev is like very pro-NKVD, super pro-NKVD, massively pro-NKVD, incredibly pro-NKVD. He's an ultra pro-NKVD, and he has this ideology called ultravisionarism, which is essentially like, you know, 1984, I guess, is like the, you know, yeah. So basically, only through all-pervasive state inclusion can society be transformed. I suppose it's also totalism from Kaiserreich. So, you know, yes, eyes over all. And you expand the NKVD, you expand surveillance, you expand the NKVD's troops. roving extrajudicial troika squads. Hand it your grain, hand it over, you know, all that kind of stuff. Then you get to sort of reunite the old Soviet Union, obviously. There's even the Polish People's State after you've taken over Poland. And that's the reclamation of Western Russia. That's essentially when the Reich's commissariats are imploding. You get a bunch of decisions to do just that. And you can reestablish Soviet Poland and give the biological weapons. Funny biological weapons. Kill Gotenland, you know, restore the 5-year plan. Then the Kiev trials are just like kill all the Nazis, which I suppose is like pretty good. Reestablish the Comintern is kill the Nazis, pretty good. And then like, you know, I don't know. The focuses seem like so like apocalyptic. Like Operation Plan Emerald Win, you know, just biological weapons all over Europe, except it's only plus 10% air superiority. You know, for 335 days. Operation Red Sun, you know, just like nukes, and it's just bomber attack. Operation Yellow Winter, and it's plus 5% attack, you know. You think funny chemical weapon? No. And then in Crimson Trial, like, allows attack on the Toronto Accord. So, like, you know, World War III and probably nuclear war. So he's like, yeah, he's like the super yikesy kind of guy in Soviet Russia. He gets to do his show trials, kill them all, you know. The neo-bourgeoisie of the right. We're gonna get to the right wing of the CPSU in a little bit. And, you know, airdrop the least guilty over Siberia without parachutes. Shoot the rest with tank guns because, you know, North Korea-style executions. And then, you know, plane ride for Zhukov. Right. And then there's also, obviously, like, the funny super science elements, like, you know, the People's Nuclear Program, Communique 001, Project Crimson Star authorized, creation of black sites in the Vorkuta area authorized, Project Fuchs initialized, acquisition of depleted uranium, and, you know, this is like black sites in Kalyama area to be expanded, relocation of villages in Kalyama area into Kalyama. It's like, you get what's going on here, you know, funny super science, you know, pseudoscience, human utopia project, you know, literally like eugenics, essentially. Apparently psychokinetic research, you know, deep space array. It's like, yes, look if there's, you know, look if there's like fucking I don't get it, like aliens in space, I don't know, just like mind control, and, you know, all the funny Cold War stuff. You get it, the funny Cold War stuff, you know, just like nuke things, add technology, nuclear bombs based, you know. And then you come down and I love this one, by the way. This one is so good. Siberia will turn red, right? Which is like, you know, you retake over the rest of the Soviet Union. Send the armor into the countryside. Union of Soviet Socialist Republic declares war on Novosibirsk. Novosibirsk is here. Test our chemicals on Novosibirsk. Union of Soviet Socialist Republic declares war on Novosibirsk. there's a, like, you know, choice in there, apparently. But they do the same thing. Obviously, you know. Then you have the Rurik dirty bombs. Nukes on artillery, which is based, or Operation Green Sky, you know, just with the funny focuses. Konev, Konev is based. Now we're gonna get through the other ones a little bit quicker. There's a guy called Kruglov, but he's also not finished, and also he leads to the Soviet Union exploding. Another guy that leads to the Soviet Union exploding is Kuznetsov. But you can have Zhukov winning the debates, and Zhukov is Nazbol, essentially. Zhukovism is a mixture between typical nationalism and communism, striving to combine socialist economics with radical patriotism. So, yeah, it's basically what you'd expect. Trying to make the Soviet Union great again, getting nukes, killing Germany, killing everyone, kill everyone. Their land, their people, their blood, obviously from World at War, you know, Call of Duty World at War. This awesome focus, Germany forever in ashes. And you turn the Volkshalle into your own embassy. So that's after you've taken over Germany. So, you know, you kill everyone. And the NKVD, essentially, he doesn't like it too much. Not one bit. So he exiles them to the Siberian Isles and creates the Siberian Isles Soviet. So that's like the funny part of this focus tree, you know, the meme part. So that's Zhukov. He's okay. Now then there's Bulganian, who is like the real CPSU right wing. Now Bulganian has this the imperial flag, obviously, has this ideology called Doomverism, which is essentially Rome LARP. You know, it utilizes a system of two ministers that have equal executive powers, like with like the Roman Republic that had consuls. So like obviously you have one man who's more like pro you know, old Soviet ways, I suppose. And then you have Bulganian doing Nazbol. Or actually, not really even Nazbol, just more like, you know, ultra-nationalism. Yeah, obviously, you know, the dual state, a nation of two armies, you know. Yeah, the dual economy. Exile cause plan to the red zone. So great. So like they're just like dual power. I don't know. One nation, two systems. Long live the Soviets. Long live the Tsar. Long live Russia. Yes. It's basically like Mladarossi, except even more LARPy? I don't know. You can have something called the Hybridist Coup happen, which then leads to Kuznetsov taking over, and that leads to the Soviet Union sort of exploding because Kuznetsov is like super pro NKVD. Yeah. And then you get to kill everyone. Basically, you get to kill everyone. In all of these Soviet things, you get to kill everyone. Now, there can also be, obviously, Molotov, as we already talked about. Molotov leads to 3 different candidates who aren't finished, so we're not gonna get into those yet. There was also supposed to be 2 other paths. One of them is essentially like there's but I don't think any of those 2 are finished. One of them I'm 100% sure that it's not finished. But essentially like one of them is there's a quagmire, there's, you know, an inconclusive result to the power struggle, and that leads to a whole bunch of essentially non-Soviet options because Soviet power collapses in Perm, and you either have the German guy, you know, Ernst Junger Ivanov taking over, or a bunch of other Republican options, Russian Republican options. Then you have yet another option which is not in yet, I know that for sure, which is traditional socialism, which is the big meme path, but unfortunately it's not in yet. But just in case you want to know, traditional socialism is what if we had basically feudalism LARP with the Soviet Union. So, like, the party becomes a system, like an order of knights, kind of. And they're the Knights of Lenin. And Lenin becomes a sort of saint-like figure. Yes. It's, hint, it's funny and based. It's not as insane as you, like, might imagine. It's just, like, cosmetics applied to the Soviet Union, which makes it hilarious, though. Also because it's led by a guy called Vasily Zaitsev, who was, you know, the sniper guy from Enemy at the Gates. And after Zaitsev can die, you know, Yuri Gagarin can take over. And you probably know who Yuri Gagarin is, and you probably know that he's gonna do space. So space, communism, knights, communist religion. Yeah, it's like, yes. Please, release it already. There's a bunch of other Russian states, of course. There's the Russian Republic, who are trying to regain sort of the whites, and they're supported by America. America invaded in the eastern parts of the Soviet Union after, you know, everything collapsed. And after Japan was over, the Americans are also in a forward base in Buryatia with Mac B. So, like, you know, in America you have Mac V, and here you have Mac B. And just like in Vietnam, they're trying to get the hell out as early as possible. And here you have a funny path with Alexander Solzhenitsyn. You know, you probably know him from the Gulag Archipelago. You might not have known that he was a super anti-Semite, crypto-fasci guy. Yes, a glorious hero of democracy, as he's always... And he was, like, super, like, orthodox, like, bigot mode. So he's super cursed path, of course. There's super cursed Norilsk. Norilsk is, like, the coldest city on Earth. And in here, it's just like a tiny... It looks massive, like, but it's like a few a few hundreds of thousands. Yeah, more like maybe like 200,000 people in this entire thing. So it's nothing. But it's, you know, a frozen waste, and they can do Ayn Rand because they are gulags with capitalism. Imagine buying a gulag. Like, imagine that. Like, imagine buying a gulag. That's Norilsk. China. Yes. I recognize Chinese music by now. Then there's Krasnayarsk, which doesn't have a focus tree yet. Actually, no, it does. You can either go to do the Gulag Revolt and either create a sort of theocracy kind of thing from the Gulag prisoners, you know, sort of a state led by a priest guy. And they're also Polish, because, you know, Polish Gulag prisoners. Or the Red Army does a counter-revolution and tries to rejoin with the Soviet Union. Or you can have stability restored under Andrei Zhdanov, who was, you know, an important Soviet person. We don't have time to get into it. Altai is also a pro-USSR ethnic republic. While Novosibirsk is just like Khrushchev social democracy with corn. You know, obviously, you know, of course, collective agriculture plus social democracy plus Khrushchev. That's entirely the reason why you'd want to play Novosibirsk, is to play Khrushchev, of course. Khrushchev is always kind of fun. So that's most... There's also Idel Ural, which is an ethnic republic of the Tatars. Now, the Tatars are this, like, ethnicity that lives, like, here. And this was a state that tried to exist during the Russian Civil War, but then it was reabsorbed into you know, Soviet Russia, essentially. And then you have the Trans-Volga, which is essentially like an... It's like a military warlord state, essentially. And it's under this Soviet... I believe he later becomes a marshal, Bagramian. He was Armenian, I believe. Because of... That name can only be Armenian, right? And when he dies, Altunin, who was another Soviet marshal, can take over. And that's basically like, again, just like, you know, ending the Mad Admiral's reign. Just like, you know, standard, like, kill everyone, army band, you know. That's about it. That is about it, in fact, for, like, all of it, except India. India is pretty nice, because they either have Bose continuing his rule, which essentially leads into... I call it Gaddafiist on my Discord server, because it's a bit like that. You know how Gaddafi in real life tried to essentially make Libya a very, very sort of a state with a lot of state intervention into the economy, except also like unnaturally strong, that's like international, unnaturally like active internationally despite its small size. Yeah, basically he tries to do the sort of whole where the hell is it? Sort of whole like non-aligned movement kind of thing. And he later can be super, you know, kill Pakistan, which is always nice. Or he can do the Asian Defense League, which is kind of interesting. And he even has the epic Small Blue Book of Subasism, which is obviously, you know, great. A bit like the Green Book for Gaddafi or the Little Red Book, you know, obviously. So, yeah, that's kind of nice. Or you can have literally the Little Red Book in the Indian Cultural Revolution under Narayan, who can either do the Indian Soviet Union, essentially, and he's obviously super anti-China because China is messing with the socialist brothers in Vietnam or fucking whatever. Or he can do anarcho-pacifism for some reason and create the Communitarian Republic of India. No, please. Or Desai comes in with the new India, which is essentially liberal India. Japanese song. Yeah, like, no, please. And just very, very quickly, I guess we can take a look at Japan. Japan doesn't have anything at the start because then you're supposed to have the treaty which creates Japan, because at the beginning it's only occupied Japan. And then essentially there are three main paths. There's the Liberal Democratic Party, which is the historical path, the quote-unquote Liberal Democratic Party. So like liberal economics and, you know, trying to monopolize sort of Japan's fledgling democratic scene. Yes, you can have Nobusuke Kishi, of course. Then there's like the ultra-nationalists, you know, sort of having Japanese nationalist revenge and, you know, restoring the empire or whatever. Or you can have the Japanese Cultural Revolution, essentially, and Japan is taken over by, you know, the evil commies, and that can also lead to funny. Now, let me see if this loads, if this save that I have as, yes, Nazi Germany, I'm sorry. This is already supposed to have a lot of the breaking up of the Reichskommissariats, just so that you can quickly see that as a sort of sneak peek for what you're going to be having in game. I believe you can also play as them if you start as the Reichskommissariats, although the breakaways don't really have. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. The breakaways don't have focus trees mostly, which is super sad. But you can see, for example, that like Caucasia is completely broken apart. Muscovy is also completely broken apart. Ukraine is also completely broken apart. And in a little bit, Ostland also breaks apart, but Ostland is actually less interesting because you essentially have that Estonia and Lithuania become the Baltic Confederation. Or I suppose it's not less interesting, it's more like less complicated. This becomes like the Baltic Confederation. This becomes some Russian thing. Reichskommissariat Ostland lives in Lithuania and tries to retake over everything. And in Belarusia, you have a Soviet Belarusia. That's literally, you know, all that is going on. So like the partisans rise up in Belarusia. A bit like how the partisans rise up in the Moscow Red Army and the Southwest Red Army Command and the Free Cossack Red Army. And, you know, there's actually even more factions in the Caucasus, although they've been consolidating. I don't have an exact save from when it breaks apart. Yeah, so there's a bunch, essentially there's, as I said, there's 3 major breakaways from the Reichskommissariat. There's nationalists, like the West Ukrainian National Republic, the National Republic of Ukraine, and the Russian Nazi coalition, which is the anti-German coalition with the Free Russian Movement, who are the remnants of the Russian Liberation Army, who were Nazi collaborators. Anti-German coalition. And the Young Russian Committee, who are, who are coming from the NTS, which was a Russian Nazi party based in the United States by Russian emigres. So they're basically people who did Nazi collaborationism and then were like, oops. And when they saw that the German ship was sinking, they decided to revolt. But then they're also supported by this guy called Pietro Grigorienko, who was a partisan. And he just like decided that, you know, denounce the dictatorial Soviet Union and ally with the literal Nazi collaborators and the anti-quote-unquote German coalition as a social democrat. Where have I seen social democrats allying with these guys before, I wonder. You know, funny social fascism jokes apart, they mostly end up fighting the Moscow Red Army because Reichskommissariat Moscovian quite literally implodes completely. It's very, very unlikely that it survives. Ukraine is in a little bit of a better position, and they also have the Schwarzmeer Deutsche Liga on their side, because why the fuck not? They're basically like a few single provinces. Ottosburg, Hegewald, and Beresan. Okay, sure. I believe Gotenland can also get involved and try to first quote-unquote help Ukraine, or Reichskommissariat Ukraine, and then kill everyone. So that's that. They have to, of course, face the West Ukrainian nationalists, the Ukrainian nationalists, the Bandera people, you know, the people. If you've ever seen any video on the Ukrainian war of 2014, these people are pretty much the reason why all the Russian bots comment that Ukrainians are Nazis. Because, yeah, these guys did kind of ally with Nazi Germany, and then they later turned against them because they're like, oh, wait, I guess the, like, people who think that, like, the Slavs are subhumans are not invading us to liberate us from the Soviet Union. Oh, wow, incredible! Galaxy brain! So that's basically Bandera right there. There's also the Southwest Red Army Command, which is the sort of red Ukrainian partisans. Obviously in the Bryansk forests, you know, in the Donetsk region. Obviously the Russian speakers, protect the Russian speakers, or some fucking shit like that. And then you have the Don Cossacks, the Red Cossacks, Although at the beginning, there's also another Red Army Cossack unit, which is under Budyonny, who was probably the most famous Red Cossack guy. But in this particular game, they got taken over. Then there's Kalmykia, who are the Mongols. Yes, look it up. These people are literally the Mongols. The Astrakhan regional government, or whatever the fuck, who is trying to... who are trying to protect Astrakhan for Nazi Germany. Reich's Commissariat Caucasian at the beginning is like around this region, and they can try to retake over everything. Then there's like a bunch of tiny like national republics, and then the Azerbaijan Socialist Republic. So that's basically Fauselwijk Reich's content at the moment. Oh, there's also Nazi Syrians, because why the fuck not? I love Nazi Syria. It's so great. Allah Surya Bashar. Ethiopia is winning. What more can I say? Oh, right, there's Free France. Sure. Free France can do a funny. At the beginning, they're a British puppet, and they can either stay a British puppet, or they can become the Franco-African Confederation, essentially, and have the Africans eventually, sort of retake West Africa. Like there's the West African Federation, sort of, yeah, end colonialism essentially. The Free French continuing to become prominent, and then be France, be Free France. It's always so great, and retake over all of Africa. That's under the Vichy French. Oh, Vichy France also has a tree, right? But Vichy France is at this moment pretty obvious. Like there's basically all paths are allowed. Either you can be an anti-German fascist, or you can be an anti-German, quote-unquote, Democrat, or you can either have a French Revolution. Yeah, it's, with the socialist path. Basically, most of the paths, though, are trying to, stay alive from Germany. And Free France, obviously, then tries to retake over the mainland, while there can be the funny meme, which is the third force, which is Rhodesia. You declare France dead, and you become Lazare, which is kill all the black people. And secure the existence of the French people and a future for French children. So yeah, that's Fauselwijk Reich. It's pretty fun. Yeah, play it. I'll put link down. Hope you'll enjoy it. See you soon.